What happens next week inside this Minnesota courtroom will have an impact across the country.
It's where Derek Chauvin will stand trial for the death of George Floyd. There are worries the verdict in that trial could spark violence. Priya Mann spoke to Chief Craig to find out what his department is doing to be ready.
Chief Craig points out Detroit was one of the few cities not to have widespread violence or looting during BLM protests last year. But with the trial for the officer accused of killing George Floyd starting next week, the chief says he's taking every precaution. Detroit Police Chief James Craig says his department is ready for whatever may happen here during the trial and following a verdict.
We don't know what the outcome will be of that trial. But given what we know, we will be prepared to keep our city and our protesters safe.
But you cannot throw things and assault police officers.
Hundreds of Black Lives Matter protesters in Detroit were arrested last summer after clashes with police. Earlier this year, most of those cases were dropped and only a handful remain.
They need to actually be forces that de-escalate conflict, and they have to stop being a force that implements inequality.
Prosecutors say Floyd died after Officer Derek Chauvin compressed his neck for 9.5 minutes while the man was handcuffed and on the ground. The defense is expected to argue Floyd struggled with police and had health issues.
We want justice for George Floyd. That's our expectation. And if we don't get it, we expect the explosion that happened last summer to happen again.
We support peaceful protests, but when individuals embedded within peaceful protesters opt to engage in criminal behavior, then we will address that.
The murder trial for police officer Derek Chauvin begins next week, starting with jury selection. I'm Priya Mann, Local 4.